Hi, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. Glad to be back with you. We're going to continue on our Bible story that we did, I think, 3 days ago, when God commanded Moses to go talk to the Pharaoh and to say, God says, let my people go. If you haven't seen that story, go to the playlist on Stories for Children or The Young at Heart, and you'll be able to find it. It's titled, God Sets the Slaves Free. Well, as you know, after the last plague, which was such a horrible plague, where the firstborn of all the Egyptians died, overnight, the angel of death came and they all died, that those Egyptians, they were ready for the Israelites to get out. They wanted them out right away. As the sooner the better, because they didn't want anything else terrible to happen to them. They had been in Egypt, the Israelites, for 430 years. And so many of those years they had been slaves. And God does not believe in slavery. He wanted his people free. I'll tell you about how many people there were. There were 600,000 men. That doesn't even count all the women and children. So there were so many people. They had very large families then. So that was a lot of people. And the Pharaoh told them to get out now. Well, that meant they had to get food for their journey. Because, you know, of course, back in those days, there were no McDonald's. There were no little stores to go and buy food. And so they had to prepare it so quickly. The women would get flour and water together and salt, and they mix that into a dough to take with them. And with that, they could bake it, probably on rocks, I'm guessing. And it would make a kind of a thick, flat cracker, and they could eat that. So, but they also had to get all their animals ready. They had flocks of different type of birds, I suppose chickens and maybe ducks, maybe geese. They had to get them all packed up, ready to go, boxed up somehow. And then they had herds of goats and of sheep, maybe even camels, I don't know. And the Lord told them to ask the Egyptians for silver and gold. Well, they were willing to give them whatever they wanted just so they'd get out of there. So they got a lot of that. And they began to take off. Let's see. And that's why they celebrate the Passover, because the angel of death had passed over their houses and none of their firstborn had died. And so every year God commanded that to be a special celebration to remember how he was so mighty. He set them free. So let's see. Now the people were taking off, and Moses was with them, and God did something amazing. He wanted to guide them, and he was going to guide them. So you know what he did? He made a big pillar that's like a tall pole. And in the daytime, it was a cloud, a pillar of cloud, and they could follow that cloud. I imagine it went way in the sky and almost touched the ground. It was really different than the clouds we see in the sky. And they could follow that exactly all day, heading in the direction that the Lord was leading. And at night, it wasn't a cloud, because you can't see a cloud at night. It was a pillar of fire. So they could see a fire at night for sure. And so whether it was daytime or it was night, they could travel. And they traveled for a while. And then God spoke to Moses and he said, have the people turn around and go back to this special town. Because Pharaoh is going to change his mind. And that's what they did. So let's see where I'm at now. And I need to see I see the pillar. So then Pharaoh, he thought, what have I done? I've let all these people go. They were valuable. And they took our jewelry and stuff. I should have never let them go. I'm going after them. I'm going to punish them. And they will be our slaves forever. And so he had all of his soldiers come. And back then they rode in something that was chariots. It had 2 wheels and a place for a man or maybe 2 men to stand side by side in a little thing kind of like this. They would stand. And they could drive those horses. They chose the very best ones for the front, and then they even had more. There were over 600 of them. And he said, go after and get those people. And he went right in the very front line. Well, the Israelites, they had been busy following the cloud by day and the pillar by night. Suddenly they heard something. And they turned around and looked. And they saw they were being chased by the Egyptians. And they knew that was huge trouble. They were so afraid. They didn't know if they were going to be killed. They didn't know if they were going to be tortured in some way, hurt really bad. And they knew definitely that if they lived, they were going to be back and be slaves. And so they were really upset with Moses, and they complained to him. They said, we told you it was better for us to stay in Egypt and be slaves than to go out and die in the wilderness, and now look what's happening. So Moses talked to God. And God said, why are you crying to me? Tell your people to go forward. So they began heading to the Red Sea. Well, there wasn't a bridge there. There wasn't enough boats for sure. I don't know if there were any boats. And the people came up against the water. And they were trapped. But God had a plan. He got behind the people. He'd been in front of them, leading them before in front. And he got behind them instead. And he made this big cloud. And the Egyptians could not see to go forward. So they couldn't chase them anymore. And God began to blow on the ocean. But first he told Moses, take your staff. Remember, I talked about a staff, big long stick, not like this, and stretch it out. Can you see that? Stretch it out over the sea. And when he did, God was blowing on it. And when he was blowing on it, it divided. So there'd been water like this, really high. And it began to blow. And it began to open up. And open up. And there was dry ground. And there were walls on both sides. And Moses told the people, go through the sea. Well, I'm sure they were scared, but they were also scared of the Egyptians. And so they went across on dry land. All day they had, because God had blown all night so that it was dry. Well, just as they were almost all across that Red Sea, God said, now you will see my power. You will never see those Egyptians that are chasing you and would kill you or put you in slaves. You will never see them again, because I'm going to do a miracle again. There was the first miracle, of course, that they got to leave. The second miracle was the cloud and the pillar of fire. The third miracle was being able to walk right through the middle of the sea on dry ground. You know what I wonder? I wonder if on those walls they could see the fish on the other side. Maybe. I don't know. I don't even know if they looked. They were busy trying to get across. Well, God had been keeping the Egyptians back with all those horses and chariots and all the soldiers, people that were chasing them. And it became daylight, and God moved that cloud away, and they could see the dry land. So they decided, we're going through too. They went through, we're going through, and we're going to get them. And they got out in the middle of the sea. And then you know what? The Lord caused the walls of water on each side to collapse down, and all of those that were chasing the Israelites were buried in the sea. Never again to chase after God's people. And the Israelites saw that. It scared them even, you know, and they realized how powerful God is. And we need to realize how powerful God is, and He loves us. And we need to follow Him, just like they're going to continue to follow Him. So I will tell some more of this story in a couple days. I hope you're enjoying it. This is Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I want to tell you I love you. I really do. Thank you for listening to these stories. I hope you're learning something. And I always learn something new every time I read God's Word. It's good. Well, I want to pray blessings on you and yours, inside your house and out of your house, in the day and in the night, and whatever you do, keep dreaming. Good night.